This is not on your radar, okay? And it's hard to find currency experts in small towns. Can't even find it in Little Rock. You really need to go to money center towns, much bigger metropolitan areas to deal with this. So the currencies of the major economies do trade in open markets, and the value of currencies fluctuates all the time. Okay, it moves all the time. And for you accounting majors, you know there's exchange rate translations that have to happen, and they will affect your sales and your expenses and your income. Okay. All right. So movements in currency. So once again, if you're doing business internationally, the job of the risk manager is to lean in and talk to the CFO about these risks. Make sure, because the risk manager has to meet with the CEO and go down a list of all the problem areas. What could happen, okay? And after that first meeting, the second meeting, the risk manager and the CEO and the CFO are meeting. And the CFO, the risk manager is saying, okay, we've got this risk, and here's what the CFO is doing about it. And we've got interest rate risk, we've got commodity price risk, we've got currency risk, and the CFO is explaining to the CEO. The CEO then goes back to the board at the quarterly meeting and conveys to the board, we've gone down our list, we're covered. We're covered, because the board has to know that the company is covered. All right, so you can, once again, you can use forward contracts, futures, and options to hedge against adverse moves in currency. Okay, so, all right, so the world is changing, and it really wasn't until 9/11 that we paid a whole lot of attention to terrorism. There have been a few acts of terrorism, I guess probably other than 9/11, probably the Iranian hostage crisis. It's probably the largest event that happened in your lifetime. Let's see, no, it wouldn't even happen in your lifetime. No, doesn't seem that long ago to me, but it happened. Yeah, it happened way before you guys.
Talking about like Reagan?
Yeah, so that happened. Yeah, that happened with Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, they waited till the day he got out.
Yeah, do I?
They waited till the day he got out. The terrorists.
They
wouldn't release him.
They gave up the hostage. Why did they give up the hostage?
Because Reagan came in.
Because Reagan came in, and they knew what Reagan would do. Reagan wasn't going to try to send a helicopter in to save those guys. Reagan was going to send in the whole fleet, and they knew that. And so once Reagan got in, they turned the hostages out over to America. But anyway, so there's for companies now, there are lots of things that you have to look out for, and think about the ports. Okay, I'm from Charleston. Charleston has a super large port. LA, they're very large ports in this country, and they deal with millions of containers a year. And you know, any of these things could happen. And of course, we know that one of them has happened. Which one? Which one of these has happened? Say it. I'm wearing a face mask because of it. You all are.
We don't know that.
No, we don't know that. We don't know that it was terrorism. But we do know that a biological agent from another country came into America. We don't know how. We don't know the intent. I'm not saying that it was terrorism. Okay? But it could be, or maybe it's not. Who knows? It hasn't been proven one way or the other. But we've been invaded by a virus. Okay? And it's really changed things. Okay? And I will say that if it was terrorism, the United States has never done anything like that. We wouldn't do that. You know, we all compete and things happen. So let's not act like we're, you know, that we're the fair-haired child and we never do anything wrong. All right, so this is a problem all around the world that we didn't have before. Once again, foreign countries do it to us, and we do it to them. Okay? Just a month and a half ago, there was a huge explosion in Beirut, and it could have been us who did that. Could have been Israel, you know. There were several explosions in Iran. Who knows? But we know that we're attacked, and we attack every day. We have to deal with it. And maybe the internet issues that we're having now are from viruses. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. And we don't know where they come from. You know, it's hard to know. All right. But it's something that the risk manager has to deal with. Back in the 90s, they didn't have to deal with this. Okay? But we do now. All right. So there are control measures, okay, where you try to lower the frequency of things like physical barriers that are put up, and things have really, really changed. And you know that if you went to public schools and if you walked into a public school and you went through a metal detector. I didn't, you know, back in the 60s and 70s when I was in public schools. We didn't have those things, okay? So barriers that come in, screening devices that come in. Y'all never flown where you went right to your gate and walked right onto the plane. Man, it was a smooth process. It was easy. And that's one of the good things about chartering a plane now, is you call ahead and you say, hey, I want to leave at 3 o'clock, and you don't get to the airport till 5 till 3, and you walk right onto your plane. All right, and setting up firewalls, you know, and of course there's lots of jobs. All these things create new jobs. I'll tell you that. And security is, internet security, computer security is an area of huge demand. Okay? Do we have any double majors in here or anybody working on MSIS? It's a tremendously lucrative area. Okay? You're going to get a good job. Okay? All right. Insurance is available. The book mentions that after 9/11, insurance companies started pulling out of offering insurance for companies and localities, municipalities. Why? Because it happened. And once it happened, you know, they weren't sure if it was really a pure risk that they could handle. Okay? Could they predict it? How often it would happen? And where it might happen? And how much it might cost to fix? And so they started backing out. And so Congress had to step in and say the federal government is going to help you, okay, federally reinsure. So if you, insurance companies will pick up a certain amount of the risk and charge a premium for it, then you can transfer part of that risk to the federal government, backed by taxes and borrowing, and we will reinsure it for you, okay? So it was available before 9/11, then after 9/11, Congress had to step in and tell the insurance companies, no, we're not going to let you pull out of this business, okay? All right. Okay. So, you know, this really depends on where you're doing business, okay? You're doing business in the Middle East. If you're doing business in Central or South America, you might want to have that, okay? And we know, any of you gone to Cancun? Okay, Cancun used to be a really popular U.S. destination, you know, for a destination for U.S. tourists, and it's gotten scary down there. So what are people doing when they go there? What's the danger? You could get kidnapped and held for ransom. That's what they're doing. It's not that they're murdering that many people, but they're kidnapping people and for ransom, for money. All right, and so if you're doing business in these countries, your key executives have to be protected. All right, climate change. Climate change is a new issue that we've been dealing with. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, we didn't think a whole lot about climate change. And frankly, I don't know what to think about climate change. I'm not an expert on it, and I've tried to research on, both sides of it. I'm not a denier of the climate change, but I don't know how much of it is man-made. That's up to each of you to decide. But our weather patterns have changed, and climate change and weather patterns aren't the same thing. They're not the same thing. But still, we have to plan for what's going on in the weather, in the environment. All right, so there are ways in the financial markets to deal with climate change, and so you can. They've created new instruments. This is called a catastrophe bond. That was created, okay, to help finance paying off problems with hurricanes and with floods and with fires and with earthquakes, okay? And so after a lot of major losses happened that companies hadn't dealt with before, Wall Street stepped in and created these bonds. And insurance companies and investment banks issued these bonds, okay? Investors buy the bonds, okay? They're usually short-term bonds, okay? And if a catastrophe doesn't happen, then they pay interest and principal, okay? But if a catastrophe happens, the investors don't get their principal back. So, for those of you who pay attention to sports gambling, there are so many different ways that you can bet. I always thought that you bet on the winner. You pick the winner. But man, now if you look at the Super Bowl, you pick on who wins the coin toss. You pick on who receives first. You pick on what the score is going to be at the end of each quarter. You can bet on any aspect of the game, okay? And in the NBA, you can bet on how many three-pointers there are in the first half or whatever. And it's the same thing in the securities markets. They just continue to create new securities that allow people to play the games they want to play, and they use the proceeds for a good cause. All right, catastrophe bonds. I have to say, as an investment manager, I've never seen a catastrophe bond. I've read about them, but I've never actually seen one in the marketplace. All right. Let's see what we have here. So, what has contributed to catastrophes? Like fires in California, for example. Okay. Some people say it's climate change, and it may be. Other people say, no, there are other things going on. Maybe it's a combination of things. Maybe it's a combination of climate change, but it also could be population growth, where people are building, they're changing the land, and they're building in areas where fires often break out, and so homes are being destroyed in areas where homes never existed before, okay? Okay? So there are all kinds of changing conditions that could account for some of what's going on. All right, so some insurers provide discounts for energy efficient buildings. That was a big thing under Barack Obama, okay, where you got tax credits for making sure, for meeting certain codes and using certain building products that were made your building energy efficient. And we all know that light bulbs have been changed all across the country, okay, for that same reason, okay? So there are any number of measures you can work with an architect who's going to list out all the things that you can do to get tax credits, okay? Let's see. Same thing with, so the insurance companies can give you discounts, and also city governments can put in zoning and building code restrictions. And that's where the light bulbs came in. I had a friend actually who was hired by a big apartment company, and his job was to oversee the changing of light bulbs in hundreds of thousands of apartment complexes, all the different apartments he had to hire crews to go in and make sure all the bulbs were changed. He had a full-time job making sure that light bulbs were being changed, and he was paid a couple $100,000 a year to do that. What a job. All right. Let's see, so you can use insurance, okay, to manage risk. And let's see what this one, I'm drawing by. Oh, this is weather options. These are weather options, okay? Once again, it's another type of security that was created by Wall Street to help firms deal with climate change, weather options, okay? So they're contracts that trade on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and that's where options trade, okay? And people are able to bet on temperature or on losses from weather that behaves in certain ways, okay? So if you're able to lock in coverage from a loss, then you can use money that you would use to cover a loss. It's much cheaper to cover it with these options, and it frees up resources for you. Okay, so the options tend to be kind of a form of insurance policy. If something happens, okay, then you will profit from the options, and the money that you profit will be available to cover the losses that you have, instead of you having to dig into your pocket, okay? So you can spend far less to buy the options and use your money on other things at the company than having to hold it back and hoping that you don't have a weather issue, okay? All right, let's, that we're halfway through, so let's go ahead and stop it there, because we're at 3:30, and I'll go ahead and let you guys go, and then we'll finish up the second half of this chapter on Tuesday. And I'm going to send out new student notes, because I rearranged this lecture quite a bit, because they had stuff that was all mixed in, and it just didn't flow very well. I'm not sure why they did it the way they did it, why they put it in the way they did. All right. Any of y'all go to Meet the Firms? No? Okay. It's a good program they have, and it's good to network and kind of get to see some folks. Class is going okay otherwise? Dealing with all this internet stuff? It's a very strange time, but I know they'll fix it. But it's just a very strange time. Oh, I'm still videoing. Time to turn it off. Peace out. Shalom.